Hey, this is Sabrina Monarch bringing you an astrology forecast for the new moon in Cancer that's happening on June 25th. So let me show you the chart here. This is the local chart for Greece, but this new moon will be sometime on June 25th, earlier in the day, in the morning hours, if you are in the States. We have the new moon at 4 degrees of Cancer in a very close conjunction to Jupiter in Cancer, also a close sextile to Mars in Virgo, and a square to that pretty close Saturn-Neptune conjunction in early Aries. So if you're new here, welcome. Subscribe to my channel. At any point, please like this video and leave a comment and let me know what resonates with you. I love hearing from you. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, depth-oriented astrologer. I actually have a new website up that I want to show you. Just make a quick announcement here that everything is now on my website, sabrinamonarch.com. There is actually, if you go to the offerings tab, a free mini course on the planet Pluto, which has been my specialty for over a decade now. And you can also find my readings and consults that you can book. I have two different kinds of astrology readings at the moment, as well as EFT sessions that I love this. I'm super passionate about it, and I'm offering it at a beta price. So if you want to learn more about it, that's on my website. Let's get back to the new moon. So Cancer relates to all things care and, also needs. So I was thinking about a title for this new moon of like the Oracle of Need. And need is something that is highly instinctual and it's also somatic, right? It's something that we can develop intellectual, emotional literacy and intelligence around, but needs are housed in the body. And so cultivating a relationship with our felt sense is going to be really important for being able to tell what we need, right? So in this culture, we are definitely encouraged to kind of go live up in our heads and be more in our intellect. And that can be really tricky for this watery realm, this very somatic, emotional sign of Cancer. And so coming back into harmony um, with what is the most natural, what is the most primal, what's essential within us is going to bring in a different kind of skill set and also a different set of vulnerabilities. So the first decan of Cancer is symbolized by the bond between mother and child. I love the text 36 Faces by Austin Coppock. That's pretty much my go-to for studying the decans. If you didn't know, all the zodiac signs are divided in three parts. So this early part of Cancer, Austin Coppock describes as, the bond between mother and child, and specifically that there's a hidden reciprocity in this relationship. That, of course, the baby is being sustained and nurtured and cared for by the mother, but the baby is also a reflection of the mother's creative life, right? And fertility and whatnot. So we find some of our own creative realization in that which we nurture and give life to, right? So our self-esteem, our sense of value in life and how we're participating with cosmos and with culture doesn't just come from, who we are, what's our kind of makeup or what's going on for us and our lives, but also how are we extending care and service and how are we, breathing life into ourselves and the world around us that is going to create esteem. And I find that in this kind of, anyone who's into self-development or healing or whatnot, you do get to a point where there is such intrinsic joy and meaning in having something that you're in service to, and also just enjoying your life, like being joyful, like cultivating these kind of things where it's not just about fixing problems, or being wounded or something like that all the time. And so with Cancer, we do want to come into harmony with our ability to nurture. And that shows up in so many different ways, including our purpose, our service, how we are literally making the world, our community, a better place. And, if we're not in a state where we feel like we are offering or providing that, then, you know, and the work always points us back within, right? So if there are parts of you that you neglect or don't care for or harshly judge, it will be hard for you to have deep empathy and care for manifestations of those same things inside of you out in the world. So yeah, just taking into account that how we care for ourselves is going to really reflect in the outer world, and that this is a communal effort, that, you know, every time someone has loved you more than you love yourself, someone who has shown up with a certain kind of care, or kind of taught you what was possible in terms of love and care, perhaps you adapted or kind of took in that love and it changed how you treat yourself and how you treat others. I know I'm constantly in a process of that, of yeah, being humbled, being brought into greater states of love from people around me who are inspiring in that way, and realizing that I can do that for myself and I can share that and I can be an anchor and a beacon of that as well. So just remembering that Cancer is a communal sign, and that a lot of the wounding or pain that we find in Cancer is also the wounding of culture and of family, of being in close bonds with people that didn't know how to take care of their own needs and didn't know how to take care of yours. So the wounding and the healing happens in relationship in this sign. Cancer is a highly primal sign, relating to our essential needs and hungers that will allow us to grow. Right? Where it's like very literally, if you eat and sleep, you know, you're good in some way, but there are more complex, deeper soul and emotional needs that when we are in starvation around those things, there is a kind of stagnation. And when we are able to be fed in the ways that we really deeply crave, there is a blossoming, there is a coming to life that happens. And so that is the garden that we're working with this sign. We also find our instincts in Cancer in relationship to our needs, and also a lot of protective instincts. This is a very defensive and aggressive sign. It has, I feel like, big, like gremlin energy, where it's like so sweet and can turn just like spicy and savage at a moment's notice if you cross her, right? So there's protective instincts in this sign for what is precious and vulnerable. Whether we are protecting others in our care or whether we are protecting something that is valuable to us, right? Our most vulnerable aspects as well. The reality of vulnerability in this sign is not really circumvented entirely, right? It's just true that there are vulnerable, soft parts of every person. But we do build defenses around it. And of course, the deeper question in Cancer is, are these defenses proper? Are they adaptive? Are they appropriate? Are they serving? Or are they choking the life out of life, is a way that I would just brutally phrase it. So at times we might lose access to parts of our joyfulness, innocence, or sweetness if we learned that there was no place for them in our lives, or if it just felt like having a target on us and it was not safe to be soft and open in such and such environment, right? Or we didn't learn how to moderate our own opening and closing depending on, you know, here's how vulnerable and trusting I can be at this environment or this stage in the relationship, and these are the, you know, proper gates in order for me to really open. And when there's not an awareness about that in the sign of Cancer, there can feel like, you know, just kind of being out in the open and being a little bit too vulnerable and too susceptible to being taken advantage of, walked over, those kind of things, right? Like this sense of harshness out in the world. And one way, you know, that family systems, for example, address this is that children are protected by the family unit, and there is a protection, ideally, of the children's joy and innocence, teaching them, you know, how to take care of themselves in the world slowly, slowly, but protecting their innocence as much as possible, and also preparing them for the world. So Cancer is the sign that is holding that kind of balance of how do you be in relationship with what is vulnerable and precious, and also how do you protect it? The learning arc of Cancer, as I've been saying a little bit here, is about recognizing our basic and essential needs. This can also be kind of a Taurian thing. And learning how to appropriately care for those needs inside of our intimate, familial, relational, and communal bonds, right? Inside of our um, relationships, and also rooted in our sense of self. It is a delicate balance for Cancer of where to allocate defensiveness to protect and how to remain open and in connection to what matters. There's definitely an alliance between those things. And this is something I grow to appreciate about Cancer more and more, um, because it's like the two things do go together in this sign, right? What is valuable and how it is protected. And that is what this sign is really learning how to negotiate. We're learning with Cancer how to recognize and implement our values, our boundaries, in a way that reflects and builds our self-respect. We develop the capacity to recognize and move toward that which gives us life in this sign, right? I think I'm thinking of like the soft life type of conversation on the internet, whatever you may think of it or what, because there's nuances that we could unpack about it, but kind of that idea of like, I'm claiming my ability to live in my joy and ease. And in a sense, this is the kind of mental constructs or ways that I'm philosophically perceiving life to defend and protect that I get to have a soft life, for example. Um, and there's always a potential critique of how we're employing defenses. And again, a certain artfulness around identifying what's important and how we really serve and honor those values in a practical way. The gifts of this archetype, Cancer, are really found like philosophically in the broadest sense in our ability to serve the life principle, serving life, right? Like being someone who creates more beauty, more fertility, more love, more creation, things of value, as opposed to draining our energy on distractions, addictions that siphon our life energy, wound cycles, right? Not that we don't go through the wound cycles and learn, but especially when we calcify our identity and become like rigid and, calcified and have these ego structures that keep us from really living because now we're just serving a concept. So, those are some broad things about Cancer to be thinking about for the new moon. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of the specifics with this particular lunation and the aspects it's making. So, the square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. There's a lot of things we could say about that. One thing I do want to highlight is that there is a sense of, like you're in the ring, you're like boxing, you've maybe taken a hard hit. There has been some impact, Aries. There has maybe been a learning experience where you tried something new or like a new path opened up, and then you're like, whoa, I just like hit an obstacle, or I had like a rookie mistake, like a newbie mistake. And there's a sense maybe of a like, ouch, I'm down hard. And also a kind of athleticism or pluckiness or confidence or a bounce back of like, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out the game that I'm playing here and I'm going to get better at it. I'm going to win. Like, watch me win. I'm an underdog now, but I'm going to win. That's kind of like the Aries energy here. But Neptune is there also. So there may also be this kind of like swirl of disillusionment or this sense of why am I losing? Dare I say, why am I a loser? Why haven't I figured this out? Am I ever going to figure it out? And so this kind of experience of hardship and how to get your head in the game is maybe what Saturn and Neptune, that's a layer that's happening here. So there is perhaps a sense of being challenged or provoked by life's harder edges, right? Like Cancer wants the soft life, wants things to be safe and cozy, and Saturn in Aries is a little bit ouchy. Um, so there is a tension here. And there's an emotional courage also that comes in that because there is maybe a sense of confrontation with this is what happened, this is how I'm hurting, this is what I'm learning, these are my learning edges. Like there's a real, perhaps, willingness to look the thing in the face with this square. So there may be a rich renegotiation happening around this lunation in terms of how we're addressing our current emotional or growth challenges and growth edges in a way that's further nurturing and fertilizing what really matters, as opposed to simply locking it away in a form of shutdown or collapse. Right. So, if you've listened to my podcast a few episodes back, I definitely shared my own version of, yeah, how I experienced the transit directly. And I've been noticing in real time that as I've been going through an emotional challenge that is familiar to me because I've been on this pattern enough times now that I'm like, oh, I know what's happening here. And there's been like almost like a game face, like I'm going to figure this one out. And I'm also going to go into the depths of what it wants me to feel. So it's been this really interesting, like athleticism around feeling and emotion and, bringing having the blessing of having the resource to be able to really look at these challenges from a more new and pivotal way. So maybe you're going through something similar, but I do think there's like an overall energy around some type of hardship that feels a little bit or a lot hard hitting, and then a sense of how am I going to nurture the situation, my life situation, my direction into health, into wellness, and be the better for all of this. Like that would be kind of the emotional athleticism of it. Another thing I want to name is that there could be like an intrapsychic, and so intrapsychic meaning like your internal emotional psychological experience happening in the mind or psyche, an intrapsychic dynamic to consider, which is how we might be punishing or shaming, which is a Saturn thing, any of like the maybe young or needy, quote, needy parts of ourselves that are subtly or overtly showing up in current situations. So Cancer is a very developmental sign, and our unmet needs of our life, of our timeline, don't just evaporate, like they become part of our personality, our shadow, our subconscious. And in some sense, we are looking through time and through corrective experiences to repair things that happened in the past. And we don't always see that for what it is. But it's influencing us, right? So there is like a self-awareness skill set to realize of like, where is this need coming from? And even just honoring that the need has a history. Like some needs might be very emergent and new and relevant to the now moment, but a lot of them are leftover things from childhood that are unresolved. So whether we can locate an age or an origin of the deeper needs that we're having, I would pay attention to when you're having an emotional experience or a need, and then immediately clamp down on top of it with some kind of self-criticism or shame, right? Or some kind of contempt, even self-contempt, self-rejection. The simultaneous having of a need and the rejection of it, right? Like the need, the complaint, if you will, the grievance being, I'm lonely. And then immediately having this kind of like shame or contempt or self-criticism instead of curiosity, warmth, or nurturance. This is perpetuating the stalled development, whether that need is new, like a brand new need, or whether there's been a whole timeline of, and this is also just really normal in culture. Like if you grew up in an environment where you were discouraged from crying, for example, or certain emotions were allowed, but other emotions were ignored or neglected or outright like shunned, then as you're experiencing that emotional wave, if you still have access to it, if life is provoking that emotional wave from you, something is still trying to complete. There's still a process that is still trying to happen, a learning process, right? And a emotion, energy, and motion process trying to happen. So, our approach, our way of seeing reality, can really benefit from looking at our issues from a place of care and nurturance, right? The garden image again, where it's like the plants need something. They need some water, they need to be placed in the correct amount of sunlight, and you're nurturing the plants into health. You're not yelling at them for not doing a good job. The learning journey with Cancer is about creating both greater emotional safety within and navigating the relational world with these needs and desires intact in a way that we feel empowered to co-create. So, right now I'm in a sexological intimacy coaching training. I absolutely love it. One of the things that we're learning all these different micro skills and practices to create greater emotional literacy. And yeah, it's so beautiful. Like I'm consistently so touched. Personal power was defined in this program as the ability to know what you need and to advocate for those needs. And I thought, I've been talking about Pluto and power for literally a decade here. And that definition of being aware and in touch of what your needs are and able to, move in the world in a way in relationship to those needs. One of the things about Pluto that has always really been with me is like creating mutually enhancing relationships, right? Creating good collaborations with the people, the energies, et cetera, that we're in relationship with. Because in disempowered or like lose lose or win lose situations, you have these kind of toxic dynamics and whatnot, or manipulations and power plays. And those are just happening because people are trying to get their needs met, but they're doing it in shady or manipulative ways. And so I think there's like a deeper arc of evolution, of consciousness, of the capacity for love to be able to be in touch with needs and to discover ways to create enhancing relationships, mutual relationships with those needs. And really, what that translates to and what that feels like is love, right? When you feel like free to be yourself and you feel met and you feel loved and you feel celebrated and you feel celebratory of the people that you're in connection with, like when there is that harmony and reciprocity, that's a beautiful place to be in. And that kind of thing doesn't just like happen in some sense. It's a type of self-awareness, a type of consistently updated self-awareness about what are the needs here, what is desired, what is the momentum of creativity that's coming through this situation, and how can we nurture this? Definitely get on my mailing list, by the way. You know where to find it. It's just go to my website and it's linked on the homepage. It's linked as a pop-up. But I will be offering things in relationship to that training at some point here, even as well, like taking my first like practice clients in my certification phase. But yeah, I'm really excited to be integrating the sexological intimacy coaching with astrology because a lot of us that are into the stars have very beautiful, subtle, exquisite systems, right? Like we're tracking some pretty vast and far out things. And having a relationship with that subtlety, but also like really bringing it deeper into the soma and into your inner felt life is just literally like, I think it's so beautiful, that experience. And for a lot of us who have that relationship to that far beyond the out there, the cosmos, sometimes there is some dissociation or trauma alongside that, right? Where it's like, how do I navigate my life? Like, let me look out to the stars. Very beautiful, very poetic. I still do it the more and more embodied that I become. Um, but yeah, I think that like becoming aware of the subtle energy and rooting deeper and down and into the lower chakras and really being here physically is a profound adventure. And yeah, something I'm excited to be brewing and braiding more in my work as we continue here. So, still have some more things to say to you about the new moon. Go ahead and like this video if you haven't already. Leave a comment at some point, even just to say hello or to tell me what's landing for you. So, I was recently moved by a podcast episode on the Conscious Love Show, a recent episode titled, Are You Punishing Yourself for Not Finding Love Yet? And in this episode, the host was speaking to how he moved through a period of loneliness, um, but was still making the most of his life, right? So he had this orientation, and what he's talking about in this episode is, instead of fixating on what's missing in your life, in this case, like a romantic partner, or you're in that pursuit, or you're grieving someone or something like that, instead of solely fixating on that, like nurture, I don't think he used that word, but I'm putting that in there as a Cancerian keyword, like nurture your life, enjoy your life, like create value in this moment right here with what's available to you. And he was describing how you don't have to bypass your grief or what you're missing in your life, but you don't like shrink your identity around it. And so he described the dynamic of like his life wasn't about the grief, or it's like I'm still valuable enough to get up in the morning and move toward my dreams. I'm still valuable enough as a person to enjoy the food that I'm eating, to have a good time by myself. And he said that there were still some lonely nights where he had to hold himself through the grief of being alone. And with Cancer, this archetype, some of the most beautiful experiences with this archetype come from being held by another person, right? Being like in a moment of need and having someone to reach out to and being exquisitely held and met. And that fulfills a very deep primal bonding need. And there are moments within the Cancerian experience that feel a little bit more orphaned or alone. And it's an important skill set with this archetype. And I think also with this square here to Saturn and Aries to be able to lean in and send some warmth and care to those moments, right? Where a mood comes over you, or a wave of loneliness, or a wave of grief, and building that capacity to honor and care for yourself. I really, because I study all these different healing tools and have different shadow work practices and EFT and meditation and visualization abilities, and yeah, just different abilities for presence somatically. I notice that it's really profound to just like pause with myself when a difficult emotion is coming up and find the way to create some repair and care in that moment. And sometimes it happens, if you're like me, it can happen if you wake up in the middle of the night or something like that, when you're kind of in your most vulnerable, half awake state or something like that, and you're processing some material from like a challenging dream or something that you're moving through in your life. And yeah, in those moments where you're not distracted or kind of like having a social encounter, or you're at your work or something that has you in a more like, state. And when all of that comes off and you're just in the moon, you're in the lunar zone, what it means to really turn toward yourself and have a holding capacity for what's coming up, not try to avoid it, numb it, make it go away or something like that. But what does it mean to meet yourself where you are the most vulnerable? I believe that the skill of staying present with difficult experiences and vibrating love and care toward them is highly Cancerian. It's also Capricornian, right? Capricorn can be quite tough, but also like Capricorn can really show up and really be there when it's hard. And I think this axis, Cancer Capricorn, it's like, yeah, it can be very exquisite around holding and care where things are the hardest. We both learn this skill inside of healthy relationships, and we grow the capacity for it in self-practice. of recognizing that we're having a feeling and turning toward that feeling with care. By the way, if you have a difficult time with certain feelings or being with yourself in them, I would recommend EFT, emotional freedom technique, and reading more about it on my website because I do have the beta pricing right now. And there's, I think, just a lot of beauty in that particular technique around creating more emotional and psychological safety and security around different feelings that have felt like too much for us to feel. And so, kind of rewiring and repatterning that so that we're able to meet ourselves in those depths. Um, yeah. So, right now, there could be momentum and motivation currently around providing nurturance to that which we are cultivating in our lives, how we feed and give energy to our service, our creativity, ourselves, our various offerings, um, in relationships, in community, in even the world at large, whether it really seems like that or it's like a ripple effect. Because this is all a natural flow of life, right? And nature that sustains us. It's being in relationship, it's sharing service and care. I want to name that there can be a part of us that feels relatively infantile and helpless, maybe not at the most conscious level, but this is going back to the developmental reality that we enter this world helpless and dependent, and it is the love of others that allows us to survive. And while we are generally functioning at a level where we do not succumb to total helplessness, right? In those moments you're in total helplessness, it's probably crisis, and hopefully you have people around you helping you out. Um, but this energy of helplessness at a more subtle level may still be playing out in some places in our lives where we feel unfulfilled hungers and we don't feel that much agency around changing the situation, right? The situation feels helpless. So bringing some focus on what we can serve and nurture, whether it's in that situation or in a broader way in life in general, widening our aperture a bit, can help balance this, as well as taking appropriate steps in the direction to like toward what we need in a more empowered way. So more simply put, that could mean reaching out to someone and asking for help and support instead of suffering silently. I think that one's really big, by the way. Like, especially, I think in the States, is now that I'm living in Greece, I get to cultural compare and whatnot. But I think the individualism in the States, there are some parts of it that I love. Like there is a cultural conditioning to believe that things are possible and that you can be an agent of your fate. And that's really cool. But there's also like this like do it myselfness. And yeah, I just think it's really interesting. Um, Being in a communal context where there's like more like neighbors sharing food with each other, or kind of like the benevolent gossip channel where someone's heard that I'm having a bad time and someone goes out of their way and they're like, oh, I heard that you were like hurting. And like there's a reaching out in care for the other and a sense of more communal reciprocity that I even find in Greece, which is um, still a Western culture, but more collectivist than the States is. At any rate, I just think that there's plenty of times when people who have plenty of resource around them, plenty of people who love them, plenty of options and opportunities and like how to engage life at any given moment will just have this wall up of like, I'm not gonna move toward what I need or want. And I'm not gonna state that I'm going through an experience. I'm not gonna ask for help. And how self-denying and severe this can be unnecessarily. And it's one thing to want to like develop more capacity in yourself and not just be like a damsel or something, like always getting support in this way where you're not developing yourself and you know that you're taking some kind of shortcut. That could be another extreme. But just recognizing like you don't have to do this alone. You are not a burden. Like there are people who it is a privilege in their life to support and love you. Like you have a channel of reciprocity with people in your life. And if that's not there, that's worth knowing. Like that's worth finding out. Um, because yeah, if we have a habit of minimizing our needs, we may have attracted people that benefit from us not having needs, right? Or that's been the unspoken relationship agreement of you don't need anything. So, yeah, just really thinking about this of like, how have you engaged your relationship with needs and care in community, both as a giver and a receiver? At the moment, Jupiter in Cancer also represents a bounty of support or resource that is available in terms of all things care. This could show up as the wisdom or counsel of friends, right? That if you are letting your needs and experience be known, that maybe there's actually an abundance of not just people who are showing up who care, but also like wisdom, like gems of wisdom, things that just hit the spot philosophically, emotionally. It could be the right teachers or guides appearing, or a newfound internal capacity to understand things in our lives that have previously eluded us, for example. But yeah, Jupiter in Cancer really has a bounty right now in terms of um, care. So, beginning to wrap up here, um, a last note that I want to offer here is that this could be a pivotal moment for learning something about care and nurturance in a place or situation or kind of ongoing pattern where we've become accustomed to endurance, grit, or self denial. And so, where we are faced with hardships that we don't understand how to be with, right, at some point in our timeline, being tough was maybe an option, like enduring was maybe an option. Maybe that got us through a difficult time when, um, even if we had reached out, there wasn't really much there for us, right? But then our ego, our identity learned like there's nothing out there. But times have changed and maybe there is more fruit. For some of us, when we become distantly aware, like at the slightest level, that we have a need, our response is to neglect the need and tough it out instead, maybe in some area of our lives. This maybe allows us to steamroll, to get things done, but we have missed something softer and sweeter in that process. And eventually it just hurts and aches because we're not, yeah, getting what we need. When we begin to value our needs and back them up more, we allow our lives to go through a new filtration and growth process where we are spending less time in situations, environments, or relationships that are not correct for us, right? Or we're upgrading those environments and situations and relationships where there is space to collaborate and co create. We exit the scarcity mentality where we feel we must make do with suboptimal experiences, grin and bear it, deal, contort, adjust. And yeah, we can still make sacrifice sometimes or do difficult things, but we can be more choiceful about it. We're not just like surrendered to life is hard and this sucks and I can't get what I need. A big adventure for this new moon connected to Jupiter and Cancer could be about seeing what grows and what falls away when we prioritize nurturing what matters. Nurturing what matters instead of enduring that which is not aligned in silence, hiding, or conformity. There is a courage and abundance mindset inside of this, a trust that life can take more fulfilling shapes if we leave the nest of our most outgrown and irrelevant habits or our outgrown and irrelevant self concepts that no longer bear fruit. And in light of that sextile to Mars and Virgo, which I haven't talked about yet, like we might have to learn new skills. If endurance and toughness have been primary operating systems, like learning how to recognize and voice needs might be a new skill. So, in summation, tune into the part of you that has needs and consider the oracle of your needs. Right? Also notice the needs around you, because if you know, where you are a tender of life or a provider in some way, you're also noticing need around you and giving your love and offering to those needs that you perceive. So this is a give and receive dynamic. While we might be updating our understanding of how to address said needs, our initial choice to turn toward ourselves with respect and care, to that which is emergent and growing, this is the beginning of a story, right, that we are giving life to. So, in all of this, take a moment, notice what you're sensing, right? Feel into it, feel into what came up for you around this. Um, and really be with that. If there's anything that you want to share or reflect or leave in the comments, I would love that. And it actually is a way to give back to this channel when you like the video, when you subscribe, also when you comment, all of these things support the algorithm and send these videos to more people that would align with it. So if you do like this content, that's a huge way to give back. Um, and I love hearing from you. And yeah, when you comment week to week and I recognize your name and stuff, I do remember you. My my world here is still quite intimate. Um, so yeah, like comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and check out the new website, sabrinamonarch.com, that free mini Pluto course that is a deep dive into this archetype that I've spent a decade plus specializing in, as well as my current reading offerings, including the beta pricing EFT sessions, which I so encourage you to take advantage of. Um, yeah, I'm going to leave it here and thank you for watching. All my love.